For the past few months, it feels like every time I check YouTube, I see a new video from a gaming channel about how they're selling all their old games off. Everyone's got plenty of different reasons for doing so, like needing to fund personal projects or having to pay for their dad's DUI classes. But when you get down to it, the main reason's the fact that physical retro games have become more of a novelty as opposed to a true form of entertainment. So take your fiber tablets, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, Cameron All One Word, to tell you why physical retro games aren't quite as necessary as they used to be. Okay, so the main reason I feel like I could shed some light on this non-issue is because I'm somewhat of a retro collector myself. But the main reason I say somewhat is because I've also been selling some of my retro games off, just not in a massive swoop like a lot of other YouTubers are. My collection was never the most impressive or anything, but it was and still is fairly respectable if I do say so myself. Before I can explain why I keep sizing my collection down more and more over time though, let me tell you why I got into collecting in the first place. Every time I got a new console or games back when I was a wee lad, I always wondered where all the old ones went, only to find out later on that my dumbass brother traded them all into Funko Land just to get 2% off newer stuff like the Virtual Boy. And just in case you're wondering, I'm really not joking about the Virtual Boy part. So if you want to send thoughts or prayers, make sure to ship them to the address on the screen. Later on when I was in high school though, I still found myself wanting to play all those retro games that I used to own. And while I didn't actively pursue retro collecting at that point, I still refused to sell any of the new games I bought ever since. Mainly because I just thought my game collection was nice to look at, even if it wasn't very big yet. Plus, I just really liked having options. This is around the same time emulators became a thing, but I don't know, playing classic games on a computer with a keyboard or even a nice USB controller always felt weird or bootleg to me. So aside from Pokemon Ruby, because I didn't have a Game Boy Advance at the time, I never really got into emulation. That is until the Wii came out anyway, where I got a little bit nuts on the Virtual Console, recollecting assloads of old games that I loved and ones that I never even knew existed. Playing classic games on my TV instead of my computer with an official Nintendo console felt like the perfect way to own retro games forever. But then when I looked at my good friend Shane's newly acquired 64 and Super Nintendo collections, I kinda realized I was building my library up the wrong way. And when Nintendo tried reselling me the same games on the Wii U, I made my mind up that I was gonna start rebuilding my retro library with official consoles, cartridges, and discs. Not only were the real controllers that the games were made for feel more authentic, but now I'd have the option to buy games that would never be sold digitally again due to licensing issues or whatever the hell it was preventing snowboard kids from being sold. But I'd also have the benefit to be able to resell these games if I ever needed to. This made buying particularly expensive games justifiable to me, because the price usually goes up more and more over time. So the way I looked at it is that if I ever did sell these games, I'd be making profit. And if that's the case, then I'd kinda be getting paid money to borrow games if you think about it. I was always well aware of the fact that I was collecting more games than I'd ever have the time to play, but as long as I knew it was a game I'd get around to at some point in my life, then I definitely wanted it in my collection. I never really had any desire to get complete libraries just for the hell of it or anything like that, but as long as a game was either decent, funny, notable in some way, or really cheap, then I'd toss it into the mix. But despite having so many of the greatest games ever made lying around, there's still so many of them that I've never even gotten around to playing even for a few minutes. Hell, some of them I've literally never even played for 1 second. All these games have just kind of been sitting on shelves in my room for a few years while I'm having trouble trying to find time to play all the modern games that are coming out. But that didn't really matter to me, because the reason I was building a collection in the first place is because I want to play every good game that was ever made by the time I die from osteoporosis. I always kind of pictured I'd play these games when I'm an old man with nothing else to do. So it never really bothered me too much that the games were just collecting dust, because just having the option to play them whenever I wanted was totally worth it. But as time went on though, it just kind of became more of a hassle to play retro games. I mean, I had the same shitty TV for over a decade because all the newer ones stopped including AV input. And yeah, I know there's converters, but even then, retro consoles are still pretty inconvenient. And as if that wasn't inconvenient enough, some people will still tell you that the best way to play retro games is to have a separate tube TV dedicated for it. And I'm sorry, but that's just too much for me. I don't got room for that. But then Nintendo released the NES Classic Edition, and I couldn't get one, so I didn't really think about it. But then a year later, they released the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, which I made sure to get on time. And like everyone else, I had mine hacked as soon as possible, so I didn't have to deal with the hassle of hooking my old console up anymore. The SNES Mini didn't feel lame and uncomfortable like playing emulators on a computer, and it didn't feel bootleg like using a Raspberry Pi either. Raspberry Pis are impressive and they emulate games perfectly, don't get me wrong, but they just kinda feel bootleg to me, I'm sorry. The SNES Classic, on the other hand, is an official Nintendo console with an official Super Nintendo controller that almost feels identical to the original. And best of all, it uses HDMI instead of AV cables. There might only be 21 games included, but like I mentioned earlier, everybody hacked it to the high heavens. Some people called it ungrateful and entitled to be unhappy with the game selection, but I felt justified hacking mine because I already owned all the cartridges anyway. They were all bought in the aftermarket, so the original developers didn't see a penny from it, but I still felt justified nonetheless. But the more I played my SNES Mini, the more I realized I actually preferred it over my original hardware. It's not quite as nostalgic, but it does offer filters to replicate a tube TV. So to me, losing 15% of the nostalgia is worth it for the convenience of an HDMI cable, not having to change cartridges, and save states that I swear I don't use for cheating purposes. So given that I preferred the classic edition over the original hardware, I just kinda looked at my games on the shelf and wondered why I'd ever want to play in a cartridge again. I mean, I appreciate Mario Paint, but it's not something that I'd ever want to play myself. And there really weren't any Super Scope games that lit the world on fire either. Plus, I also don't want to pay for overpriced reproduction cartridges of Japanese games that were manufactured by people who had nothing to do with the translation. I mean, it's nice having the cartridges and all that, and I do see the appeal to it, but even though I didn't need the money for anything in particular, I'm not exactly rich either. So I kinda figured why not clear some space out and make some extra money while I'm at it. And before I knew it, the man you see in this clip died and a new, slightly richer man was born. After all, my main goal was to have the option to play any retro game I ever wanted, so why not choose the cheaper, more convenient, and higher quality way to do so? Then the NES Classic came out a few months later, and I sold that library off too. And besides not having a Dogbone controller anymore, I don't have any regrets over it either. Nintendo, I know you're watching and don't want me to come back over there and whoop your ass again, so just go ahead and make a Dogbone controller, will ya? While I don't have any regrets though, I will admit it was a little sad seeing all those old games go away. But I told myself that I'd only sell retro collections off if I found a better way to play those games. But I kinda put myself on a slippery slope since I justified selling my Genesis collection off before the mini console was even announced. I feel pretty strongly about keeping certain libraries like the 64 because of my Pikachu console and HoriPad, and especially the DS and 3DS because the dual screen emulation will probably never be comfortable. And, well, because I want to keep my Street Pass progress. On a side note though, I think it'd be pretty cool if people were still doing Street Pass in like 2050. I can assure you my Wacky Pack eating ass is gonna do it. But I wonder if I'm eventually just gonna get rid of everything, since I'm finding it easier and easier to justify making quick and easy money. I mean, they're never gonna make a Virtual Boy Mini, but even so, I had to wonder if I'd honestly ever want to play Jack Bros in my lifetime. And believe it or not, I actually realized that I probably would. But then 2 hours and 5 migraines later, I did everything in the game that I possibly could have, and I decided I'd rather make $370 rather than let it collect dust. Which I think's pretty good, seeing as how I got the Virtual Boy and its entire North American library for $300 in 2009. So not only did I get a Virtual Boy and most of its library for negative $80, but I also got to borrow Jack Bros for a decade. And in case you're wondering, the game was fun while it lasted. Maybe I'll make a review on it sometime, I don't know. But the key here is that something about sizing my collection down was kind of addicting. I mean, I really don't need Twilight Princess or Pikmin's 1 and 2 on the Wii U, GameCube, and the Wii. And it was a tough decision to make, but I didn't see the need to have two different versions of Luigi's Mansion either. So, sorry to say, but the GameCube version had to go, because I like portability and making 20 extra bucks. If I ever decide to play Majora's Mask or Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, why would I ever choose the GameCube Collector's Disc? I mean, it's kinda cool and it makes sense why people would play it back in the day, but I really don't need every version of these games. I understand that for a lot of people, collecting's more about the hobby itself than actually playing the games, which is all fine and dandy, but unless you've got money to spare, it's just kinda hard for me to justify for myself. As satisfying as it is making extra money though, I'm still not willing to sell everything off. I absolutely refuse to get rid of either version of Wind Waker because the Wii U version's better and my GameCube copy's the one I got made fun of for pre-ordering. I was gonna get rid of Metroid Prime for the GameCube since I already have Trilogy on the Wii and I prefer pointer controls, but I got cold feet when I remembered the Game Boy Advance connectivity. I know Trilogy has the Fusion Suit too, but I just couldn't bring myself to get rid of it, at least not right now anyway. To simplify everything I just said though, I used to think the idea of selling my game collection off was insane. I'd have held off on doing it unless I was in danger of being homeless or something. But Nintendo's Classic Edition consoles being more convenient and fun while still feeling official and nostalgic enough convinced me to get rid of those parts of my collection. And once I learned that selling those collections off didn't hurt my soul like I thought it would, I realized that there was nothing stopping me from selling the rest off either. Plus, there's assloads and assloads of excellent modern games coming out all the time, not to mention a lot of them do retro gaming better than most actual retro games. And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who feels this way, hence why a lot of people are selling their collections off. You wouldn't think retro collecting's slowing down if you looked at the eBay prices, and maybe it's not, but I don't know, it just feels like everyone's selling their games off. And seeing how all these videos of people selling their collections off are popping up around the same time I started to sell my collection off, I'm pretty sure all these YouTubers must be feeling the same way I am. It's not really that anybody needs the money, it's that the actual cartridges are becoming more expensive to buy, and at the same time less necessary and convenient to track down. But anyway, how do you feel about collecting retro games? If you have a collection, is your motivation to build it as strong as it used to be, or are you losing interest for any of the reasons I mentioned? Whether you have a collection or not, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll try my goddamnedest to respond to everybody. But let me tell you, if there's two retro games that I'd never sell off, then it would definitely be today's patrons of the day, Aaron Ayala and Richard. If you want to be badasses like these two, then consider supporting FU Game Crew on Patreon for loot boxes in the mail and other wacky rewards. And if you want to make a cameo, then send pictures or videos of you rocking any FU Game Crew merch like these legendary human beings you see before you. As always, like and share this video anywhere on the internet to help this channel grow. And if you want to prove that you're not down with registered sex offenders, then go ahead and press the subscribe button if you haven't already. My name's Cameron, all one word, and I'll be back with more videos soon.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.